Welcome back to Los Comics TV. I'm your host, Javier Hernandez. It's Wednesday, May 2020, meaning May 20th, 2020. Okay, so, if you saw on my social networks a few days ago, I guess by this weekend, I did a little post, kind of like a question, asking people what their first exposure to anime, Japanese cartoons was when they were younger. So my four that I remember watching, first time was Gigantor, Speed Racer, and the other ones were Kimba, the White Lion, and Astro Boy. Sorry. So both those last two, they were both made by created by the same Japanese cartoonist, Samu Tezuka. So anyway, and people had all kinds of great answers. So many listed Speed Racer in their list of first time, because Speed Racer's been, packaged and shown, almost maybe every couple of decades, every decade for the last 3 or 4 decades. So that's not surprising, but you can tell some of the people were younger because of newer anime, and then the older folks like myself, Gigantor, Speed Racer, Astro Boy was very common, Marine Boy. But anyway, I want to spend time today talking about these two in particular, Speed Racer and Gigantor. So, I need visuals, so I may as well bring out the DVDs. So let's, start with Gigantor first, because it's black and white, and then we'll go to color. So there was, I think 52 episodes? Yeah, episodes up to 52, 27, 52. So I think that was kind of a standard for at least back then, for Japanese animation. Speed Racer probably is similar. So I was a kid when I was watching this stuff. So I'd be watching in the early mid 70s. And so we used to have this thing, but it's going to be, I don't know if it's too convoluted to try to explain to everybody, because I'm sure there's a wide range of people watching this. It was on a UHF channel. So back in the old days, you had a TV screen, a TV set with 2 dials. So the one dial was the main channels, channel 2 through 13. And then depending where you live, West Coast, Midwest, East Coast, channel 2 would be something for me, and 4, and then for you something else. And then on the main channel, you go to there was one, I think a letter U. Yeah, it must have been the letter U. That was the UHF channel, which I don't exactly remember what it stood for, but there were these kind of, I guess, mostly local programming, although the other channels had local stations too. So like I said, just say it was some cool mystery. It was almost like having cable. Remember, you used to have to pay for cable, but everything was free on there. So on the UHF channels, I remember there'd be a lot of Spanish. There'd be a couple of Spanish networks, like Channel 34, KMX here in LA, where I watched a lot of Lucha Libre, and then all the soap operas and the game shows my parents would love to watch. That was Channel 34, and I think that was Channel 52, which had Spanish and I think English. But, actually, Channel 52 is the one I want to talk about. Today, that number still has a special, Channel 52. So on Channel 52, they would show all this stuff. Gigantor, Speed Racer. I remember, I think the Addams Family was on there. And then a lot of anime. And it was just the cool channel, And again, it wasn't a secret thing, and it wasn't an extra you paid for, but it's like this, I don't know, Channel 52. So Gigantor was something I used to watch a lot as a kid, and it's this giant robot, as that's a very Japanese, a staple, I guess, in early manga and anime. So this was in Japan, this is really cool, right? In Japan, it was called Tetsujin 28. I think it was Tetsujin 28 Go, which translates to Iron Man 28. I think it predated our Iron Man by a few years, actually. Yeah, because the manga came out in 1956 to 66. It ran 10 years in the. I think it was shonen, but I'm not sure. It ran in one of the Japanese, I guess, weekly thick compilations. So yeah, came out in '56, so it did beat our Iron Man. And it was created by this manga artist writer Misutero Yokoyama, and it was created a few years after Astro Boy. So you heard me mention Astro Boy earlier in other episodes, I'm sure. It was that, it was a little boy robot, kind of like Pinocchio, that this scientist created, and then the robot kind of had life of its own. The thing with, I'll just call him Gigantor. That's the American name. So another boy. These boys get a lot of power in Japan. So 10-year-old boy's got this little control box, and he controls this robot his father built. So the manga ran 10 years, and then in the mid 60s or early 60s in Japan, they started developing a cartoon show. And then by the late 60s, it aired here in the U.S. I think there was a gentleman called Fred Ladd, a producer, I guess, one of the pioneer Americans, like importing Japanese, or at least being put in charge of it. So, of course, he's got to hire writers and such, and they got to give it a new name, because I think by then Iron Man was already might have been on some of those real early Marvel cartoons started showing up. But regardless, for the American audience TV show, they named the character Gigantor. That's how we all know the famous theme song. Look it up. No, I'm not going to sing it. And then they had voice actors to do all the voice, for the characters. So, and it's just so basically this little boy in the manga, it was called Shotoro. Here in the U.S., Jimmy Sparks. So little Jimmy Sparks and is a team of, I think that's the father, and then that's Inspector Blooper. So it's a very, very kid-friendly show, and then, robot fighting other giant robots, which is, boy, when you're a kid, I was probably about the same age as Jimmy Sparks when I was watching this stuff. Yeah, it must have been, definitely. Not much to show you here, just so that, boy, I don't know. I know now a lot of you guys are switching over to digital only. I just want to download the episode, watch it on the computer, my phone, and then go on to the next episode. But this isn't that long ago, but it seems like such an old thing now. Yeah, collecting DVDs, especially when they made these really cool, I put it in wrong, these really cool packages, right? You got all the discs here. This is so antiquated showing you this, but you get this cool little filler book. Like, okay, fill it up with pictures, which is always cool, and of course the episode guide, and then it gives a synopsis of each episode. Again, it's kind of filler material. It's just fun to have, right? It's that collector mentality, that physical. You want to look at stuff and flip through it. But this is a really cool set by Rhino. I don't know when it came out, but within the last, for sure, 20 years. I can't make out here. It's all tiny white letters on black is hard to read sometimes. Oh boy, I can't see that at all. Anyway, so I got the 2 volumes, and they're on actually they're on YouTube. I was looking earlier. I don't know if it's official or what, but you could watch Gigantor if you haven't. So this was something I just loved watching, and it's so great when these DVDs was a really big thing where you could actually I could actually own the entire run of my childhood enjoyment. And so the other one that was a really big favorite of mine is Speed Racer. Not all going to fit here, but just to have some visual here. So Speed Racer, again, it was, I was watching this as a kid. I didn't know at the time, but, it was originally a Japanese manga by, one of the old masters, I guess, Tatsuya Yoshida, who created this. He also created, as an animated show, I don't think there was a manga of it, what we called over here Battle of the Planets, which came out in the late 70s here in the US, and I think it was early 70s in Japan. Also known as Gatchaman in Japan, but I think people here you'll remember it as Battle of the Planets. So it's the same creator. So before he did that, he created the Speed Racer manga in '66, and it's a teenager. He's got a whole family. race car family, a mom and dad and little brother. And here's the family here. Pop's racer, mom racer, and mysterious brother. And so they were, it was a not car chase episode. Car racing. Sorry, it was a car racing basically series. But the cars were really cool because of course, the Mach 5 was all souped up and had all kinds of weapons, and the cars didn't just race. It's like a demolition derby and a long distance racing. So they're racing in impossible situations, icy roads, deserts, Egypt, the pyramids. But I guess the cars are allowed to crash each other and, fire weapons at each other. So, totally perfect for a manga and a cartoon and for little kids to be enjoying. I'm surprised more of us didn't grow up violent, but although I shouldn't say that because then we can start thinking of real world horrible situations. But I'll tell you, I didn't ever get too crazy in my car. So yeah, Speed Racer, again, that was a staple of my young childhood, like it was for so many. And of course, the DVDs came out and I had to pick them up. This series is pretty cool, the actual DVD sets. I don't know if you can tell. You should be able to see the texture on here. So it's rubber, some type of rubber, but it's supposed to be like a rubber tire. I mean, that is pretty cool marketing, right? And it slips out of the case there. The second one, if I remember, yeah, you can't really tell. This is kind of thick, this front cover. It used to have a battery because I think the lights would blink. I don't think it played the music, but the lights would blink. Yes, young people, they used to do fancy packaging for the DVDs. Volume 3, this was always interesting. Look at this. So it's tin, right? It's the steering wheel of the Mach 5. And then the disc is inside here. Watch it not be in here. I got a stash of money. Yeah, it's just kind of weird. It just kind of floats on this little foam thing so it doesn't scratch. So I don't know, that's kind of it's like, wow, they're really thinking outside the box, literally, for this package design. This one, I think I remember. This is a regular, CD case, but I believe it came in inside like a box, and I think there was pretty sure it was a Mach 5, a die-cast car here, which I'm sure I have it somewhere. So this looks plain, but yeah, it did come with the Mach 5. And then the last one, this is funny. We ran out of ideas. You can slide it's a license plate. This little metallic. You slide it out. I never took it out. Like, no, I want my license plate in the box. So anyway, again, these are super fun. These things were shown either in the morning or I definitely remember like remember on Channel 52, it was kind of like in the afternoon by the time so you get out of school, elementary school, 2:30 or whatever, 3, and then you go home and try to rush your dinner, rush your homework, and then you'd be watching Speed Racer in the late afternoon for years. And being exposed to it as a kid, it's just, like I said, I watched several different animes, but yeah, it was Speed Racer and Gigantor. I guess something about the action with the car and then the whole family dynamic, which I thought was kind of different for a cartoon. Very tight family. And there's a humor in it. There was definitely a lot of action, international, like gangsters and kind of like spies and conspiracies. Like all this stuff was always going around the racetrack, So there's always a race, but then there's like, he's got to figure out who's killing this person or who's trying to steal this secret or kidnap this princess or something. And I guess it could be kind of violent because you'd see the car chase and the bad guy's car go flying off the mountain and blow up. I don't remember if they showed the guy crawling out. But, in Japan, things were way more looser than they were here during that era for what you could show kids. So I'm sure that these were probably edited a little bit for our American eyes. But this is some great childhood stuff. So these two are probably my two favorite, like, original old school anime that I grew up with. I want to share with a little bit of this. So I said Speed Racer was originally a manga. In the 90s, Now Comics, it's a U.S. publisher, they printed some of the original comics, the original Japanese comics. This is a cool collector box, right? So it's the Mach 5, the front. And then this is against the back view of the top. Yeah. So anyway, let me slide this. Let me get rid of the box for now. So yeah, they finally put these out in, this was 2008. So in the 90s, Now Comics had reprinted some of the original Japanese comics, with English. And I think after that, in the early 2000s, Wildstorm, I think it was the Image Studio, and I think it went over to DC. They put out reprints as well. But in 2008, this company called Digital Manga, interesting name. It's digital, but they put out hard copies. So they put out the entire run, which was awesome, right? For like American fans to, I can read the whole series now. Forward by Peter Fernandez. Did I mention Peter in the DVD talk? Let me go through this really quick. So yeah, this is the original comics. The car chases, written and drawn by Tatsuo Yoshida. All the characters are in here, the family and everything. Pops, the dad, used to be a wrestler, so he would kick some butt when the guys came to threaten the family. And it's just great stuff. So great. Yeah, the car, the control panel on the steering wheel. One of the famous weapons was these jumpers that propel the car up in the air. The car could actually go underwater, and it had these two huge buzzsaws that come up from under the front of the car. But like I said, I did read like a few of the stories in the 90s, but it was definitely nice to be able to have the whole collection and just really, get into the whole comic book universe. This tornado swooping the cars up. Yeah, here's Kabbalah. I remember him in the cartoon. He had this, is there a picture of him? He had this mask with this pointy nose, and it really stood out as a kid. But yeah, so a complete set. I'm sure you can probably find this collection. It's already 12 years old, maybe on the secondhand market. I don't know if it's still in print. Here's some nice color images from the cartoon. So there we go. Read I saw the anime, and years later, I got to finally read the original comic from which it sprung, which is, it's always nice to do that, right? Because you want to actually go back to the original creator or creators, but this was one-man job here, Tatsuo Yoshida. So, salute him, and it's nice to have his work. Really quick. So, like I mentioned, Fred Ladd bringing the, being in charge of the American version of Gigantor. So, for the U.S. market, they hired this actor, director, writer called Peter Fernandez. And I remember seeing his credit on the cartoon. And it kind of stood out to me like, hey, look, he's Latino, right? That's interesting. I think I had an inkling that these cartoons were imported, because I think on the Speed Racer credits, you'd see a couple of Japanese names, probably like the original production people and such. But it wasn't, as a kid, you're not really like that in tune, like, oh, that's Japanese anime. We didn't call it anime back then. But so Peter Fernandez, he got the job to get the episodes from Japan, and he didn't speak Japanese or read or understand Japanese. He would just, I guess, screen it for himself and figure out the story, and then he would just have to write dialogue to match what was going on the screen, right? Because they didn't do any extra work on the cartoons once they got here. They wouldn't, edit a scene or whatever. So I think some people always not criticize, but I guess have a laugh when they're watching the cartoon, and one of the characters is talking, and then like the voice is going really fast, right? Because he's got to get a lot more dialogue out than what's being animated on the mouth of one character. And that's why sometimes when you hear the characters talk, it's super speedy. But Speed Racer, it's a racing cars cartoon, so everybody should talk really hyper and quick. But so in 2008, I think it was, when the movie had already come out, I was hosting a podcast called Planet Comic Book Radio out here in LA where I live. I live in Whittier, but I was in El Monte. But I say LA because everybody knows where LA is at, and it's within LA County. Blah blah blah. So I'd interviewed mostly local artists, friends I knew, or other cartoonists across the country, mostly independent people, DIY, self-publishers. But I had done several episodes, and it's like the Speed Racer movie was coming out, and I was thinking about like, man, you know what? I gotta find Peter Fernandez's contact info, and I need to write him a letter and ask him if I could interview him for my podcast. So I forgot how I got his info. I looked it up online, and somewhere there was an email for him on, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was his website or an article he did, and like, here's his contact. So I didn't do anything like, I didn't hack in any records or whatever. But anyway, I emailed him, and I have the email up here. Dear Mr. Fernandez, my name is Javier Hernandez, and I host a comic book podcast called Planet Comic Book Radio. Show's based in LA. I'd like to invite you on my show as a guest. Of course, I'm asking you to talk about Speed Racer. I will tell you, a longtime fan of the show and absolutely love the movie. I cannot believe how great the film was, and seeing you in it only added to the experience. The filmmakers really caught the spirit of Speed Racer. Family first, then all the fun, crazy action. I got choked up several times during the film. And I mentioned when like I told you, when I used to watch the show here on Channel 52. Then I told him what day I do the podcast live, Tuesday, 5 p.m. If you're interested, I do have Tuesday, May 27th available, the day after Memorial Day. I also have Tuesday, June 10th available. This would be by phone, of course, and I figure it would take up 45 minutes of your time if that's okay. In any case, please let me express my deepest gratitude and appreciation for the wonderful work you did in bringing Speed Racer to American audiences. The show remains my favorite cartoon of all time, and the movie is pretty much right up there. Best, Javier Hernandez. And then the very next day, I sent this out in the evening, and he lives in New York. I think it was upstate New York. And he wrote back, and he put, Javier, please, and please, he wrote in capitals, Javier, please call me Peter. I love to do your podcast. Tuesday, May 27th would be fine if your slot then is still available. Still available, like I wouldn't save that for him. My home phone number is da-da-da-da-da. All good wishes, Peter. So I was like, wow, I was surprised. Wow, he actually wrote back. It turns out he's a really down-to-earth guy, and I'm sure back in 2008, he was, pretty much, I guess, semi-retired or retired and mostly just doing appearances and, interviews because of the movie. The movie comes out in 2008, so there's all this new interest in Speed Racer. So, yeah, like, right away it's like, okay, this guy is down to earth, So then I don't know if I called him before the show or we talked right before we started recording, but I remember calling him, and he was just, how you doing, Mr. Fernandez? And I called him Peter. He told me to call him Peter. How are you doing, Peter? Oh, fine. I just put the chickens in, I think he said. So right in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, so Speed Racer's all grown up, retired. Maybe him and Trixie here got married, and they got a little farm, and he's raising chickens, and he's got the Mach 5 in the barn, under a tarp. So anyway, yeah, we did the interview. I called him up. We did it live on my radio show. Boy, that was unforgettable experience. To be able to talk to someone, of his stature, in my pantheon of childhood like memories and heroes, like Peter Fernandez. So, hope I didn't slide this out of camera range. Let me check. So, interview went great. Oh boy, that's way out. No, hope this has probably been sliding around as I've been talking, and none of you told me. I'm kidding. So that episode, that podcast went on for maybe, I don't know, probably a year. And then one day it got hacked. Someone hacked into the server and just messed it all up. This was 2008. I guess that was the new thing to do. And they called me, the people at the office where I was doing it, and yeah, man, it's we had to take the site down. It's all, infected, whatever, I don't know that whole thing. So yeah, the show was canceled. The episodes were all, corrupted, I guess, on their server, but then there was some other backup or something. So I pretty much pulled all the episodes and brought them home. I have them now. MP3 files. I just don't have anywhere to put them. But someone reminded me, a friend of mine, like, well, put it on your YouTube or my channel, I guess. So that's not going to be today, but I have to look at that. I mean, I've heard the episode several times over the years. I'd have to edit out the music because I played music back in the day because I did have a license at this place I was doing the podcast. So I actually played the Speed Racer music from the TV show. So I'd have to take that out because I can't I won't be able to load that up here without getting eventually a copyright strike against me. I don't want that episode to have to come down. So once I figure out how to edit the music out, I can upload it, and maybe I can make that another episode of Los Comics TV interview with Peter Fernandez. But anyway, so like I said, it was a huge honor to be able to meet Mr. Fernandez / Peter. Okay, excuse me. So there was also, I did mention this. There was Gigantor was originally manga, right? So years ago, I was able to get. There was I think there's 12 volumes that reprint the whole the whole Japanese run. Don't know what year these are. Yeah, I don't see a year on here. I mean, it says copyright 1970, but that's when they started probably collecting them. So again, this is probably within the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years when I got these. But yeah, so check out the art. This is 1956, I said. Japanese comic art. Very heavily influenced. It looks like a Disney comic. I mean, right? I think hopefully you can see those. Raise it up a little bit. I mean, look how, look at this stuff. The little March of the Robots. It's got like a cute look to it, right? Look at it. I mean, the characters and the robots. This is great. It's very much influenced by Black Ox. I think that, yeah. It's like an evil robot, all like dark black color. There's a Shotaro, Jimmy Sparks, and let's get to there's Gigantor Tetsujin 28, robot versus there we go, robot versus robot, WrestleMania here, man, great stuff. But yeah, this art style. I mean, Osamu Tezuka, which I had mentioned him on an earlier episode, some of his work. He was a huge Disney fan. So when he started doing comics in I think the late 40s and throughout the 50s, 60s and everything, he was like really the first big Japanese manga artist. So he influenced so many others. Look at this, Mitsuteru Yokoyama is also drawing that kind of Disney-esque cartoon style. Look at these robots. So the art style, when it translated to animation, it was done in Japan. It was pretty close to this. So that's what we ended up getting. English versions. Frankenstein shows up here. Here's actually that's Black Ox. That other one was a different robot. Oh, I know. You know what this is? Yeah. When I was buying these manga, I used to buy these at a place called Mandarake, which some of you may have heard of it. There's a huge one or a couple in Japan. I think one's like a 5-store building. It's a huge pop culture store. Thousands of books, new and old manga, toys, old toys, vintage toys, and posters and everything. So in about 2000, I made some new friends from a convention I was at. Actually, Ted Secco, I probably mentioned him before here, and he was telling me out in his neck of the woods, what they call the South Bay of Los Angeles, like San Pedro and Torrance and all that, Gardena. They had there was a big Japanese American community there. So they had a mandarake. They had a Japanese shopping center, and there was a mandarake in there. So I was like, whoa. So it wasn't as big as the ones in Japan, but, a guy like me, was really at the time getting into this stuff. You walk in there, it's like, wow, tons and tons of used Japanese manga. They'd bring in from Japan and toys. And I remember buying these little. So this is another Mitsuteru Yokoyama character. I think it's called Red Mask. It's a ninja, and he's got a red mask. And so this was what they call like a candy box toy. It's like little boxes. They have them in the candy section in the markets, and then you open it up, and there's always a little toy, an action figure, a vehicle. Sometimes you have to put it together. Real simple, like 3 or 4 or 5 pieces, and they're already painted. But this was a little card that came in that box, I remember. So I stuck it in one of these books. But yeah, again, you know, growing up reading the some gangster guys. This guy's kind of like looks like a druid priest wearing a robe and the long pointy hats. There's an ad for some other comics. Tetsujin 28 and Black Ox. Here we go. So, yeah, gangsters, guns, masks and guns. Well, I was making an actual point, but I forgot what it was. I'm sorry. So yeah, I collected a lot of, you know, I was able to get the whole run. There's 12 volumes total. I know I have up to 10. I was looking earlier, I was like, wait, did I not get all 12? But, you know, I cannot read Japanese, so when I'm telling you about these books, it's just because I'm going through it, just, you know, looking at the, and they're highly visual. I mean, it's a lot of it's just really about action. So you can kind of follow the story there. You know, nothing too deep. It's just basically a kid and his robot fighting bad guys and helping the police fight the criminals. So, fun stuff there, man. And, oh, you know what? I think I do have it here. I had something I wanted to share earlier, and I was going to try to dig it up. And I don't think, did I? Hang on. I hate to put you on hold there. Oh, this is relevant. Because those of you who know about old school Japanese cartoons and such, a lot of people have heard of Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, right? So remember Giant Robot? That was also on Channel 52, by the way. So guess who created the original manga? So this is a Japanese show. They brought it over to the US and, you know, put English voices on it. But this was based on a manga, also by Mitsutaro Yokoyama. It's called Giant Robo. It came out, I think, in late 60s, the Giant Robo manga. That was after he did, you know, Tetsujin 28. So he did this manga on this character, and then they made a live-action TV show, which is the same premise. It's a young guy and a giant robot. Except here, now this is he worked for this, you know, secret peace agency called a Unicorn, kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. from Marvel, like this international police force, but they were all about peace, and the boy somehow got a control of this watch that controlled this giant robot, and they used the giant robot to fight bad guys. So it's kind of like the same idea, basically, but a live-action version of this. So, yeah, again, came over to the U.S. in the late 60s, I think, as Giant Robot. And again, yeah, you know, able to buy the... I broke it. Thanks to you guys, I broke this. No, just kidding. Able to buy the whole set, the whole series here. And so, yeah, I don't think a lot of people know that. But Giant Robot by the same creator of Gigantor. So, 2 more great hits from Channel 52. Let me put these here. And I guess we'll just end off, right? I guess we're pretty much done. Just wanted to share, you know, wanted to share with you guys, basically, you know, talk a lot about these 2 anime shows that I was a huge fan of and still am. And now I own them all. Isn't that great? Or own copies of them. I'm not the copyright holder. And yeah, this little side thing, Giant Robot. Johnny Sacco and his flying robot. So that's it. That's it for my trip down anime lane for now. There's more anime to talk about, you know, down the road for the show. More manga to talk about. And I've talked about some already. Yeah, before we called it manga, before we called it anime here in the US, it was just more cartoons. And then you start realizing, okay, they're coming from Japan. And then you realize, man, the whole scope of Japanese pop culture via manga, anime, live action films, and then the ocean of merchandise. You think we merchandise here, which we do? Boy, they got on a whole nother level. But you know, they're just as inventive as any other country. You know, Mexico, U.S., France, Italy, you know, wherever you've seen some great stuff. You know, the Japanese are right there. Some say, you know, ahead of the curve. I love what they do. I don't want to knock a lot of our great American stuff, right? I mean, come on, we came up with Howard the Duck. But anyway, I just wanted to share that. If you want, in the show notes on, you know, down below here on, yeah, down below here, right, from where you're looking. Please, you know, share anything that favorites of yours. Like I said, a lot of you have posted on my Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and a lot of people who I don't know, but they saw that and they chimed in, which is great. So it's always good to spark a little, you know, conversation, and you know, sometimes I'll learn some new things I didn't know before, and I can look into it. But yeah, thanks again. Well, thanks once more for watching. Hope you enjoyed this episode down anime lane, and we'll all be back here, right, for the next episode of, I almost said Planet Comic Book Radio. We'll be back here for more Los Comics TV. Thank you.